What's going on, guys? In this video we are going to go ahead and take a look at the RK2020 and do a little emulation test on it. This is Steve from Restalgia, and let's get started. Alright, so welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, please go down below the video and hit that subscribe button as we're working our way towards 26,000 subscribers. Now make sure to also turn on notifications and hit that thumbs up button while you're down there. Now I do want to start off by saying that this was sent to me for review by RKconsole.com. However, as always, I will give you guys my honest perspective on this device. So first, we're going to jump right into the unboxing. This handheld is actually available in a few different colors. Now I was sent the purple version, but they also have a translucent black, and recently they also released a nice full aluminum body version as well. In the box, we obviously get the console itself. Now, the device has got a fairly nice layout and does include L1, R1, and L2, R2 shoulder buttons. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and set this aside and we can take a closer look at this in a little bit. Now, as with most of our other devices that we get in this kind of market, we do get some very basic accessories, and those are going to include things like an instruction sheet that goes over the basic operations and firmware updating instructions. We also get a USB Type-C charging cable and a small micro SD to USB adapter in order to transfer additional games onto the card. Now, this device is a direct clone of the Odroid Go Advanced handheld with a few small exceptions. The biggest notable one is the latest iteration of the Go Advanced has a built-in Wi-Fi module, whereas this device was a clone of the older Odroid model, which means no Wi-Fi, no Bluetooth. Additionally, the physical housing is different in terms of button placement and style. Aside from that, though, the performance is going to be the exact same, and this is a great alternative for people who have been having trouble getting their hands on the Odroid Go Advance. Now, looking around the device, we really don't have anything going on the sides of the device. But taking a peek at the bottom, from left to right, we have our speaker, we have a reset button, and our micro SD card slot. On the top of the device, we have our L and R shoulder buttons, a full-size USB 2.0 port, a Type-C USB port for charging and data transfer, a 3.5mm AV jack, and our power button. The back is mostly uneventful. However, I should say I don't really like that we can see through to under the battery. We immediately see a black strip of double-sided tape that holds the battery down, and I really just think it looks off. They could fix this in a couple of ways. One would be a transparent tape so it wouldn't be as noticeable, and the other way to fix this is simply by putting some sort of an RK2020 branding sticker or something like that on the back to cover that area. I do find that this is a little bit off-putting, and it kind of gives a more cheap overall look to the device. Moving over to the front of the device, we have our standard 4-button gamepad layout with start and select buttons. We also have a D-pad and low-profile analog stick next to our screen. Overall, the controls feel fairly good. They are certainly not the absolute best that I've ever felt, but for a $70 device, I don't think I could really expect much more. They have responsiveness, and they do provide some good feedback. The D-pad feels okay, but it's not great, and I will say that I do actually like the analog stick a good amount. Now, moving on to the internal specs of the device, it's going to come loaded with a quad-core Cortex A35 chip clocked in at 1.3 GHz. The GPU on this is a Mali-G31, and it has 1 gig of DDR3 RAM. The screen is a 3.5 IPS display with a resolution of 320 by 480, and the battery is a lithium polymer battery with a capacity of 2600 mAh, giving you a good number of hours of continuous play. In terms of the software, this comes loaded with EmuElec, which is a front-end running RetroArch, and it is fairly easy to navigate and work with. If you are familiar with Raspberry Pis and Emulation Station, you should have no issues whatsoever loading games and adjusting settings. I should mention this device did have a few issues with the battery indicator not reading correctly, and the device actually getting quite hot during long play sessions. But these issues have been resolved in the latest batch of handhelds being shipped out, and the only other couple things that I'm going to mention here is that you probably noticed that there's no physical volume control, and I'm not really a big fan of this, but audio is easily controlled in the menu or inside of a game by holding the select button down and pressing the up or down buttons on the D-pad. Additionally, I'm not a big fan of the placement of the speakers, and because of the form factor of the device, you typically have your pinky finger resting right over top of the speaker, which does block some of the audio, and it can be a little bit annoying. Now, shifting gears, we are going to be talking about some of the big features of this device, and one of them is that it is marketed as being able to emulate some of the more difficult consoles like Nintendo 64, Nintendo DS, Dreamcast, and PSP. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you guys what it can do. In terms of the other 16-bit and older consoles and games, this device really has no issues with that whatsoever. I was able to comfortably play arcade games or CPS1, CPS2 arcade titles, and even get through the FX-enabled SNES games with absolutely no issues. Now, this doesn't really come as a big surprise, but I do want you guys to know that any of those types of older games have absolutely no issues running on this device. But the first thing that we're going to really go ahead and take a look at is Nintendo DS. Now, out of the box, this thing is completely pre-configured to work with all of these consoles in terms of button mapping. Nintendo DS actually plays really well on this device. You can easily switch between the top and the bottom screen with the L2 button and move the on-screen stylus with the analog stick. R2 is going to act as your stylus tap function, and you can jump back over to the main screen again with your L2 button. Nintendo DS emulation, like I said, is actually fairly good overall, and I really didn't have any issues with any of the titles that I tested. Next, we're going to go ahead and jump into some PS1 emulation. This device is able to handle that with no issues whatsoever and ran every single title I threw at it at full speed. Moving into the more difficult consoles to emulate, we're going to go ahead and look at N64. Now, this was really hit and miss, but mostly miss. There are some titles that you can play in at almost full speed, like Diddy Kong Racing or Mario Kart, but you're really not going to have much luck playing games like GoldenEye, Cruisin' USA, or Conker's Bad Fur Day. Moving along into some Dreamcast emulation, we actually have some very impressive performance. Now, most of the titles that I tested, I was able to enjoy at near full speed with some frame rate drops when there was too much going on the actual screen.
Okay, you ready?
And finally, we're going to go ahead and take a look at PSP emulation. Again, this was hit and miss, but it was actually still fairly impressive regardless. Now, I was able to play some of my personal favorites like Tekken 6 or Little Big Planet fairly well, keeping in mind that I did have frame skip on, so we were not running this at full speed. Games like God of War, Chains of Olympus are not really games that you're going to want to play on this device because they just don't emulate well.
Round 2. Fight.
Now, getting to my final thoughts, this is a device that cost between $65 and $100 depending on which color or shell you decide to go with. Now, mine was a $70 version, but there are some things that could certainly be improved. For example, the lack of a physical volume rocker and the D-pad, but overall, it's a decent gameplay experience. Now, you can play all of your retro 8, 16, and even many of your 32-bit era consoles without any issues, and even moving into some of the harder to emulate consoles, it does a fairly good job at this price point. If you are in the market for one of these, I would say this is a good value. And knowing how difficult it is to get the Odroid Go Advanced, this might be something that you want to pick up. Now, as always, I will leave links in the description down below for you to check out, but that is pretty much all I've got for you guys in this video. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of my videos. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button if you liked the video or the thumbs down button if you didn't. Thank you so very much for watching, and I will talk to you guys again real soon.